What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Season Gaming Bitcast, episode 167. I am your host, Mr. Ainsley Bowden. Travis is already ready to go. What's happening? Good morning.
Getting in the mood, man. McClunky. Got to get hyped. Bitcast this morning. You know, it's 8 a.m. I got to psych myself out here on the West Coast. So.
Yeah, you got to wake yourself up mentally. I get it. So, how we doing, guys? How we doing? Mr. Dan Rodriguez, Mr. Tie Guy Travis. What's going on?
Feeling good.
Dan, you yell at any kids in the neighborhood lately, or what's going on with you?
No, mostly just people that are, driving around.
Full-grown adults.
Yeah, they're mostly
full-grown adults.
Yeah, it's mostly get off your phone, you idiot, while you're driving. It's stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's just me.
Well, adults need yelling too.
Usually more than the children.
Yes, absolutely more than the children.
It's true because they don't have an excuse.
This is true. Yeah.
If the pandemic has taught me anything, it's to not care what other people think. So I've been rolling down my windows and full blasting road rage at people. What are you doing?
Okay.
Get off your phones.
That would be the lesson Dan would take away from COVID. Is don't be afraid of what other people think.
Don't be afraid to road rage.
Nope, that's right.
Yeah.
Get your vaccines.
Great.
Yes. So good morning, everyone. We kind of have a different show for you today. So we're gonna start off with normal game conversation. We're gonna talk about Call of Duty Vanguard's reveal. Yes, we're going to talk about Halo Infinite, hopefully not for too long, talk about what we've been playing. But then about 25 minutes from now, as we're starting right at halfway through the hour, Dr. Rachel Kowert is going to join us. She is the research director at takethis.org. If you follow the channel, you might have seen my interview with her a couple of months ago around all things gaming impacts on mental health. And so we wanted to have her back on the show to talk through some of the things, what she's been up to, some of her conversations. She does a lot of good work over there at Take This. And we're just going to kind of have a conversation, open conversation with her that you are free. Obviously, if you're listening to this later, no. But if you're here in the live chat this morning, you can feel free to ask questions or just kind of get involved in the conversation as well. So should be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it. Chat, good morning. Good to see everyone. Bomber coming right out of the gate.
Out of the gate. Happy Bitcast Day. # cancel Halo. I'm with you, Bomber. Fantastic. $3.
Don't you start.
That's all Halo deserves.
Don't get Dan too excited. Don't get Dan too excited out of the gate here.
No, it's all right.
Thank you, Bomber. Appreciate it, brother. All right, guys. So let's talk about what we've been playing. What have you guys been? I know Ghost of Tsushima, expansion is out, Dan. That's obviously one of your, kind of more recent favorite games. You were just talking about Hades as well. Travis, I reviewed 12 minutes. So what's good? Dan, let's start with Ghost of Tsushima, man. How's the expansion?
I mean, I think I'm not super far in. So it's kind of one of those things.
The fact that you had to start with,
here's the thing with the DLCs lately, and Assassin's Creed is probably the worst. It's basically adding content just to add content. And they've changed enough to where it's not Ubisofty. And it's actually worth it. I'm not sure the upgrade, that $10 PS5 upgrade, is worth it. It's the graphics look almost identical to me.
Joe said the same thing. He said the expansion he's really liking, but the upgrade is super minimal.
Yeah, the DualSense stuff is nice. I mean, they did a really good job with that. It's not super invasive, and it's it's not minimal by any means, but it's also. It just feels natural, which is nice, which is what you want. You don't want it to be some kind of super overblown stuff, but you also don't want it to be, unnoticeable. So that was maybe worth $5. So, but everything else, I'm not a huge fan of drug hallucination stuff. So,
in games, you mean?
In games, yes. Yeah. Normally, shrooms, bring them on. It doesn't matter. I've done stuff, but it's just overplayed. I feel like in video games, it's like every Far Cry has it. I feel like every game has to interject a little bit somewhere along the line, and I mean, this one just basically starts off with that, and it's just super annoying. Just let me play the game as intended. I understand what they're trying to do, but I don't know. I think it's just kind of overused. So, but otherwise, it's what's really good about it is the story. It's kind of delving into Jin's backstory and his family, and really going into that. So that's actually part of the best part so far. But again, I've only played a couple hours. So
is the island piece? I've heard it's about a third of the size or a quarter of the size of the main island.
It's about the size of the third part of the island, I guess. So,
is Travis, you going to be with us for the whole show? Or are they coming to get you?
I hope not.
Please break in.
I'm still a free man.
Is it the same type of environments as the original island, or did they introduce anything new?
Yeah, there's a few places that you kind of get to in the first. Most of it's the same. There are some like small parts of the island that you're like, whoa, this is gorgeous. Like there's these trees that have these really bright violet flowers on it, and they like you when you walk into that, you're just like, dang man, this is crazy looking. But for the most part, it's very very similar. I know there's a lot more shoreline, being an island, so that's I noticed that right off the bat. And also horse armor, which is awesome. And
is it $6?
No, we've come full circle. It's $30. So we've come full circle from Oblivion horse armor. And now we have it in Ghost of Tsushima. So it's actually pretty cool. They've added a few mechanics like being able to run people over with your horse and the armor, and it's awesome. Okay. The first time you do it, you're just like, oh yeah, suck it.
God, it's Oblivion horse armor is just a funny conversation. Thinking back to those times 15 years
Simpler
ago.
times when we were mad about horse armor, and now in retrospect.
Yeah, with many of us, myself included, saying, why would you ever pay money for digital goods? And look at where we are today.
I bought it day one.
But so did I. Horse armor, you guys are. I remember Todd Howard recently, year or two, talking about how many people actually bought that. I know it was real small. It was like 2% or something of players. Like,
people don't really interact with games like that.
Not like that.
Now it seems like a microtransaction that, like, if you put it in a game, it would be fairly innocuous. But at the time, it was like, oh my god, how dare they do this?
Yeah,
like,
it was.
Yeah, kind of ridiculous.
So, good morning, chat. Good to see everyone. Marion, good morning or afternoon from Europe. Big Mad Mo in the house. What's going on, guys? Travis, you talking about Hades still, man? You still kind of stuck on it in a good way. I mean,
it's got me in, man. Yeah, in a good way. I think I've done like 20 or so successful runs out of like, so like I'm like post credits, and they still give you more stuff to do, and like, it
just can't get
like
enough. Huh?
Yeah, man. Like I'm just like, I'll be like, I'll sit down, I'll play for like 30 minutes, then I'll get back to work, and then I'm like 4 hours later, I'm like, oh no, what have I done? I'm like, I did like 6 runs or whatever, and I can't bring myself to stop. So I've been doing that. What other games have I been playing? I got to the title screen of 12 minutes, which it's as far as I've gotten on that game.
Haven't gotten past that yet, huh?
I still, obviously I'm going to play it. But yeah, my all my buddies said like, oh, it sucks. So I was just like,
what?
Oh,
come on.
Well, that's unexpected. So I haven't. I sort of like put it off of my my like priority list right off the bat. But I want to play it. I'm going to play it probably today.
I'm actually really interested to hear your thoughts on it. Because
I'll probably like it more than my friends. My friends are like the types of gamers where they don't like puzzles in games. They're like, it's got puzzles, and I'm just like, all right, well, like obviously you're probably not gonna like the game. Then it seems like it's a puzzle game. So
no, there's a lot. We joked last week, right, about hand holding. The game tells you nothing. I mean, you have to figure it out. It's very much, and I wrote this in my review, right? It took me back to the days of the 80s and 90s of click and point adventure games, where like you just have to experiment, right? Can I do this? And see what happens when you do it. And you just keep doing that in a cycle. And I think the most intriguing part of the game, or the thing that really hooks you, or hooked me anyway, is when you do experiment and you do something and it does either progress the story, or it makes you think of something else new to try. You're like, oh, that works, and now I can maybe do this, right? And it's like this domino effect of trying to figure out how to progress. Now, there are some frustrations in that, because as you're doing that, the game keeps restarting. So you're like, okay, I need to do X, then Y, then Z, then Q, then P, and keep trying things. And but the story's really interesting, I think, too. I gave it a 7.5. I know a few people who have it really high up, and then I know a few other people who hated it. So it seems to be one of those very divisive games.
Immediately, it was like, all right, I wasn't expecting that. There was so much hype for this game, and it seems pretty divisive. So.
Yeah, I think no, Darwin, it's not time. My cat is trying to join the show. I think it's just the type of game it is. It's a very different game mechanically than most games today. It's not something you go in and talk about how fun the gameplay mechanics are, right? Yeah. It's not that type of game. Did you seriously just sneak around to the other side?
How long is it, by the way? The game?
So I beat it in maybe let's see. I think I put 6 to 8 hours in my review in general. Now there's multiple endings. So depending on how much you want to do, if you want to get the other achievements, some of the achievements are kind of obscure. So yeah, I mean, you could probably beat it in 4 if you race through it. Obviously, there's a big difference if you're going to look up what you have to do versus figure it out, because some of the things can be a little obscure. And like, I was in party chat with a few people last night who were like pretty far in the game. But they're just stuck. And I'm like, I know what you have to do, but I don't want to tell you. You know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. I probably will not get stuck, would be my guess. But yeah.
Okay.
The people I just because like puzzle games are.
I know. You got it. You already got it figured out. I know.
Oh yeah.
You are a hipster here. You know that.
Figured out how to get past the menu, the opening menu. I haven't yet. Yeah. And then I guess the other game I played this past week was Recompile, which I did the review for IGN.
You gave it a 6. I saw.
Gave it a 6. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's a platformer. Have you ever played a Metroidvania before? This is that. That's my review. Is that it's just like
nothing that makes it stand out.
It's a 4-hour game that afterward you're like, all right, that was cool.
That was a game.
Yeah, that was a game. Yeah. Next, so yeah.
Interesting. All right, guys. Well, why don't we move over to a couple topics just before Rachel joins us here in about 15 minutes time. So Call of Duty Vanguard, we got the reveal this week. I want to kind of give my thoughts on this because it ties into the whole Halo thing, which we'll get to, which is, am I the only one? And I know I'm not the biggest Call of Duty fan, so let me preface it with that. But I'm at the stage in my gaming life where if you're gonna broadcast a big reveal and all you show me is a 3-minute cinematic trailer that shows literally no gameplay, I don't really have time for it. I'm out of patience with that. If this was something that came like 6 months ago and it was like, here's our vision for Call of Duty Vanguard, and now a couple months before launch, we're getting gameplay, I'm all good. But for this to be the first thing we see, and then for them afterwards to say, we'll talk more about the actual game a couple weeks before launch, that's just ridiculous to me. I tired of it, honestly. This did nothing for me. I mean, the trailer was great, as it always is. Call of Duty always has a big bombastic trailer, right? Very action. It's like your summer popcorn movie, but that doesn't do anything for me gameplay wise.
Yeah, I think the cinematics are fine if it wasn't a Call of Duty game, like you said. If it was like a brand new IP where you're, and you want to show, like Fable, when they showed that.
Yes.
Maybe it's not a new IP.
Because you're setting a tone, right? Like Call of Duty, we already know what the tone is. It's the same every year.
What's happening. Yeah. So whatever it was that they tried to do, they failed at it. And if you're going to come out and, it was a ballsy move to do. I mean, given the circumstances now at Activision. And that's not saying that, I'm proud of what they did. I'm not saying, oh yeah, you guys, that took a lot of guts. No, it's, I can't believe that they didn't wait a little bit longer and then show the cinematics and the gameplay. But if we're looking at weeks prior to launch, where are we at with Call of Duty?
It's only, what are we at right now? It's only 6 weeks to launch.
Yeah, that's insane to me. Insane. So I've been done with Call of Duty for a long time. I've loved the campaigns normally, but now, it's they're a mess. They're just a mess. I wish they could just decide on what era they want to stay into. It's all over the place.
I don't know. I think Travis, I don't know if you have a different perspective, but I think the other thing with the era too is like, okay, they shift eras every year to try and keep it fresh, but that's not what makes a game fresh. What makes a game fresh are mechanics, gameplay styles, the way you can approach situations, and that's always the same in those games. I mean, they feel so samey. So it's like, okay, we're back to World War II, but it's still Call of Duty. And I realized, I said earlier this week in a conversation with someone else that I think Call of Duty kind of holds that place for many, like Madden does for some others and FIFA does for some others, where it's like annual comfort food. It's like, this is the thing once a year I buy with my friends, and we don't think about it. We just play it and have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't do anything for me personally.
Yeah. Well, for the trailers thing, I think cinematic trailers certainly have a place. Like,
sure,
like you guys said, you can use them for like explaining what the game is going to feel like. In Call of Duty's case, I think it's probably more about like the premise they're going for, right? So what do we get out of this? We got it's World War II. We're going to be fighting on every front of the war, which tells me that the campaign's probably going to have like a vignette kind of feel where
Battlefield 1 maybe
from different characters. Yeah, like a Battlefield 1 situation. So that is all cool. Like, it doesn't personally get me excited, but it shows what the game is going to be about. So I think it serves a purpose. I think the bigger issue is, they're going to show gameplay so close to the game coming out. Does that mean that they're impacted by COVID and they're just sort of running behind, and this game has kind of like timing issues where maybe it should get delayed and it's going to kind of get forced out the door? If that's the case, that's kind of scary. Or maybe it's just the fact that they don't really need to show gameplay because we all know exactly what Call of Duty is going to play like. Maybe that's really what it comes down to. We're like, all they have to really do is show the idea. And if you like Call of Duty and you like their World War II games, you'll buy it. And if you don't, you probably won't. And so it's sort of just them saying, yeah, I think we're all good here. Like, this is not a game that needs a lot of like explanation for how it's different than that sort of thing. So I don't know, but yeah, obviously I'm sort of with you guys in terms of like Call of Duty. Like, it's not my game. I play it every year. I usually get through the campaign, but I don't play multiplayer. It's not the hill I've chosen to die on per se. But like I said, I have a lot of casual friends who hate games like 12 minutes because they have puzzles.
Sure.
And they always play Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're waiting for this game to come out, and
of course,
and good on them. I'll probably pick it up, when it's cheaper and play through the campaign.
Yeah.
But, if it has one, which
it does.
I think it does.
Yeah, you play as actual different protagonists. Again, the whole vignette thing. I think there's 4 different protagonists you play as in different stories. So as Jordan says in the chat too, and we joked about this with Faz, who I think is in the chat as well, and did our review for Cold War last year. She couldn't even finish the review because the campaign was broken. You couldn't finish it. So I think, we talked before about the different years in the studios and the 3 studios making Call of Duty. And then when that got thrown into flux last year or year and a half ago, maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because of other stuff, who knows? It's kind of thrown a wrench into Call of Duty's annual shift of release for each 3 studios. And it's, I can only imagine what goes on behind the scenes with like 7 studios working on one game that's being rushed, and has to release at a certain point. And it's probably, I can only imagine. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not picking it up.
Call of Duty. Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. It'll still sell 20 million copies. So it is what it is. All right. That takes us to Halo. So we've got 8 minutes in theory before Rachel gets here. And I've got a lot to say about Halo.
Hold on. Let me just say this. I don't care. I'm totally fine with everything that happened.
Yeah,
because I'm going to be playing solo.
Yeah, but I know you don't care. Don't care.
I'm here for you.
But I would like to hear your perspective on what I say, along with whatever Travis's thoughts are. Because Travis and I have not talked about this prior, by the way.
All right.
So, allow me a few minutes, guys, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
All right. So if you didn't hear the latest update from 343 yesterday, they did about a 25-minute video talking about the multiplayer flight, what's to come in future multiplayer flights, etc. And then, the Joseph Staten came out, basically the head of, creative director right now of Halo, and said that campaign and multiplayer are rock solid for launch, but they're in a shutdown mode, which is polish and bug fixing now for those things. Because of that, they've made the tough decision to delay campaign co-op to 3 months post-launch, around 3 months post-launch, and Forge until around 6 months post-launch. This went nuts yesterday on social media. And again, let's recognize the fact that that's an echo chamber, right? The millions and millions of people who are going to play Halo and pump for Halo don't even know this is going on, right? This is the echo chamber online that we're part of. So first, let me say, the childish behavior and reactions by some people in this community are just absurd. You are grown men, for God's sakes. Like, what are you doing? If this is the most important thing you have in your day, is to get online and freak out and, you know, make videos and argue with people that campaign co-op in a video game is not coming until 3 months after launch, reevaluate your life's priorities. Okay, because it's just, that's meaningless. The second thing, and that ties into the whole transparency angle, right? We always talk about wanting studios to be transparent. You know, everyone cries for that. Tell us, communicate with the community, communicate with us, tell us what's going on, tell us. 343 has done that arguably better than any company this year. They literally have updates almost every week from their community manager. You know, Unicheck's out there, Sketch is out there. They have a monthly full long update of specific angles of Halo Infinite. They've had an open beta or a beta test, which they allowed people to stream, make videos of. You know, there was nothing hidden about it. By the way, I'll remind everyone that just 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how amazing Halo Infinite is, right? And how well it plays. Call of Duty has shown us a cinematic trailer and nothing else. Battlefield had one beta, hashtag unplayable, that you're not even allowed to talk about. Okay, those games launch in a few weeks. Good luck. Halo has been, or 343 has been fully transparent about this. Now, the other thing that this ties to is the most egregious things I've seen are people taking shots at 343, which again, stop it. You're not children. 343 is a super, super talented studio with a lot of people who adore and love Halo probably more than you do and want nothing more than to see this game be the best it can be. And may I remind you that among at least a large percentage of the community, because we talk about this all the time, Halo 4 is arguably the best Halo campaign. Halo 5 is arguably the best Halo multiplayer, both created by 343. Now, we've said before, the total package is a whole nother discussion, but this mindset of Bungie being this, you know, perfect being with their Halo games is so far-fetched and just pure wrong. I have no idea where people get this notion. Halo 2 had a third of its campaign cut that we've never played. Literally, Bungie has talked about this. They cut a third of that campaign out to meet release. And that campaign was criticized heavily at launch. Halo Reach almost destroyed Halo. The multiplayer was so broken at launch and so divisive that you would have thought there was a civil war going on in the community. Like, people don't remember these things now, but they happened. Bungie made plenty of mistakes with Halo along the way.
Actually, the Halo developers have a joke, which is, what is the worst Halo game? The most recent one.
The most recent one, exactly right. Now, campaign co-op and Forge are definitely meaningful things to Halo. They are. They're big features. They're a big part of the community. And I realized, of course, that the expectation was that they would be there at launch. And so I get the disappointment. But acting like this is some critical thing that the game has to be delayed for and 343's failed and all these things is just absurd. Campaign co-op is a minor percentage of the people that play this game. No matter how many people are yelling on your timeline about, I always play co-op. No, you don't, because the data is there. Dan and I always talk about having the real data. They have the data. They know how many people play these things. It's not that high. It's less than 10%. In most cases, it's less than 5%. So let's not act like this is some gigantic miss. And frankly, if you're one of those people that says delay the whole game because I want to play co-op, don't play it for 3 months. You have that option. You don't have to play it. take your time. Let's not also forget, there's a whole other things like when people say delay the game, and I'll wrap up here in a second. They're also missing all the business aspects, right? There are marketing deals that have already gone into effect that are already paid for, worth millions or tens of millions of dollars. There's production on merchandise and things that'll be already launched and launching over the next few months. There's things with food companies that we saw last year, right? Like Monster Energy, Doritos, etc. Those things are done well in advance, and they already lost a ton of money on them last year. Those are all coming and already planned. So it's not as simple as just saying a feature is not ready, we're going to delay this game. It's literally just showing your ignorance of how production on games works. I could keep going. I've already gone for a few minutes. I'll stop. There's a bunch of other things I could say, but the long and the short of it is the vast majority of people are going to love this game at launch, assuming it launches well, right? The campaign and multiplayer have to be very good. It's going to be on PC, console for the first time, cross-play, cross-save. This is going to be incredible. Delaying a game for 2 features makes 0 sense whatsoever. And I think it's ridiculous, the conversation that unfolded yesterday. Sorry, I took a lot of extra time there. Travis.
Nice.
Yeah. I also have opinions on this that the internet seems to not agree with. But yeah, but like in the way I see it, like 343, first of all, yeah, totally. Like 343 is being transparent. They're trying to make a game too. I get it. But they're kind of just responding to how the industry works now, right? Like games are like, whether you love it or hate it, games don't ship with everything in them. That's just the case now. And if it were, back in the Xbox 360 or the original Xbox days, and they were shipping Halo 1 or Halo 2, yeah, they would probably need to build out every feature of the game before they put it out there, because updates were less common, and you were playing off of a disc and that sort of stuff. But that's just not the way it works anymore. Like, this game is going to evolve. They're going to get new maps and new modes, and all this stuff is going to be added to the game. There will probably be balanced patches in the campaign and all that stuff. And that the fact that campaign co-op and Forge aren't in the game. First of all, Forge not being in the original game is like classic Halo. I mean, I feel like we're always waiting on Forge. We definitely did with Halo 5. It wasn't there at launch.
No, and yet Halo 5's Forge is considered the best ever because they took the time to continue to develop those tools.
Yeah, and I think Halo 5 Guardians has evolved over, since it launched into an incredibly successful platform for Halo. MCC, I mean, that game would have basically not existed had they not worked on it. So I definitely think, obviously, cooler heads should prevail here. On a personal note, I kind of like the fact that campaign co-op isn't going to be the game at launch. And this is something I tweeted that I got, just people were really, really mad at me on Twitter about this. People I don't know retweeting me and being really, really upset about this.
As soon as you said that, I knew you were going to invite some interest.
Oh, I kind of knew it too, but like that is my opinion. And honestly, like it has not changed at all. I get the argument, right? Like I personally don't want campaign co-op in the game at launch, and I'm kind of glad that it's not. And the reason is because I want to play the Halo campaign by myself and enjoy it and understand the story and all that stuff first, before I bring in my friends and have to listen to Dan eat a sausage over mic and all that stuff that I'm gonna have to do when I play it online. And other people are saying like, okay, well, Travis, if you don't want to play campaign co-op, like don't play it, like just play solo and then you can. Obviously, yeah, but here's the thing: when you put campaign co-op in a game, all of a sudden it becomes more complicated. You have people, drop into your campaign, or they're hitting you up on party invite and be like, "Oh, just play with me just right now, and then we'll do." It becomes social just by the fact that it's an option, and then you end up having to go back and play it solo later. And so I like that it's like forcing us to all just like play the campaign in a balanced way by yourself, understand the story, and then later they'll introduce campaign co-op, and then you'll have 3 or 4 Master Chiefs all destroying enemies and teabagging and stuff like that. But it doesn't make for the most like sterile, enjoyable campaign environment if you have friends that are able to just like drop in, drop out, and are talking to you on mic and all that stuff. And I kind of like that it's not going to be an option at the beginning. That's just my personal take. Like, I would have tried to play it alone in campaign co-op anyway.
Me too.
I would have tried, and try is the operative word. That's why I like that they're not giving me a choice, because it's kind of like forcing me to just like enjoy it for what it is initially.
Well, yeah, and if you look to that point, if you listen to 343, that's part of the problem with them tuning co-op, because this campaign is so different from other ones, right? Being open world, that they explain that part of the problem is exactly that, is like they don't know, they're trying to make sure checkpoints are functioning properly and save progress, and people can go off and do their own things completely independent, and let them get it right. Like, you don't want, why would you want them to force something to launch that's kind of half messy when you can just let them get it right?
Yeah, and I think more importantly, it's not essential to the game. Like,
no, not at all.
Has every other Halo game launched with campaign co-op? Like, absolutely. But this is a very different game, and let's just give them a chance. I don't think there's a reason in getting angry or pretending like you know more about their game than they do, and therefore you know if it should be delayed based on this one feature. Honestly, I'm more upset that like Forge is not in the game at launch, because Forge is so awesome. But I mean, 6 months waiting for, I would say Forge is like an extremely optional feature for like a Halo game launching. And also, this game is, I mean, it's called Halo Infinite. Their whole plan is to evolve this as like a Halo platform
for years
in the future. And so it's like, if you weren't expecting them to sort of like give us a little bit now and expand it, like, you haven't been listening to what 343 has been saying for the better part of like 2 or 3 years, that this has been their messaging the whole time. So again, I could also go on, but I guess people online really have opinions about Halo, and I'm actually surprised this blew up as much as it did, to be honest.
Me too. I didn't think anything of it when I first read it. I was like, oh, okay.
I was like, that
okay.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's pandemic. The development's tough. The game's huge. It's a new engine. You know, I mean, there's a lot of factors here. Okay. Big deal.
I mean, I knew obviously I was inviting like people who have opinions on the internet, because when you tweet something like that, but I was just surprised by like the movement. Like, people want Halo to get canceled or get delayed or whatever, and I'm just like, I don't understand that. Like, let the developer do their thing. They made the game, not you. Like, we'll judge it once we have it in our hands, but until then, like, let them do what they're doing, man. It's their game. So
great. Dan.
So, you want to do the super chats real fast?
Then let's get the super chats real fast. Go for it.
Fat Boy Horror, £5. Preach, Brother Ains. Yep.
Thank you, man.
$5 from Dan Lazaro. Ains is speaking 100% truth. Grown men are being babies right now. They need to go out and touch some grass. Every poll is 70% don't care about co-op. Fantastic comment.
Touch some grass is my favorite way to say, like, go outside.
And $5 or $10 Mariano Pampa. I stand with Dan. I don't care. Give me a Halo. Or give me Halo. You guys are making too much sense. Stop it. Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it.
Do. Now, bear in mind, Mariano, when I say I don't care, it's not because I don't care about what everybody's saying. I literally don't care about Halo enough to get involved. I have Halo muted in my muted words. So I had to look this up and see what everybody was up, going crazy. This is what happens on my Twitters.
You're missing out on all that hot Angel content by muting Halo.
No, I muted Halo. I don't see any of this stuff. Oh man! Here's the thing. I've only ever played really campaign. I've never played co-op campaign. I've never played. I mean, I played Forge with the kids back in the day, but now they're all grown, so it's not a huge deal. I don't.
Dan's
I'm not
bad,
invested.
I think, is the takeaway from this.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I'm just not invested in the game enough to care. But I'm just glad I'm going to be able to play an open world Halo campaign at launch. That's
at your pace, taking the story how you want it.
Whatever I want to do.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing. And multiplayer is going to be there for everybody. I mean, that's the biggest part.
Key. Yes,
right. So we've got the basically 2 parts, and this isn't, like Call of Duty, where you're going to get like a 2-hour campaign and then you're on to the multiplayer. If that's this is I'm
the multiplayer that feels the same as the multiplayer of the past 9 years.
I'm expecting a really good campaign. I'm expecting really good gameplay, and I'm excited for it, even not being a Halo Infinite fan. So this whole thing is just noise to me, and I ignore it most of the time.
You didn't even have to say to you. It's just noise.
It's just noise. So, I mean, just let's just play some games, guys. I mean, get over this. You know, I mean, it's I don't know what it is because I didn't see all the arguments and people getting upset. So you guys explained it. It's crazy to me, but not surprising.
Crazy, but not surprising. Exactly right.
Yep. Sadly.
Twitter.
Yes. All right. So now that we got that off our chests, we're going to move on to the other part of the show as I previewed earlier. So, excuse me, Dr. Kowert is ready to come in. And so we're going to bring her in now and have a much more meaningful conversation than campaign co-op and Halo.
That won't be very difficult.
Good morning.
Good morning. Halo's important. Halo's meaningful.
True.
Listen,
So much shame
I don't know how
being
much he
thrown.
paid you to be on here, Dr. Richard Kowert, but understand that it's not. It's okay. I'm there with you.
How you doing?
Doctor's in the house.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. I'm caffeinated. I'm awake.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what
always
I've got going here as well. Yes.
We were just having a group therapy session about Halo. So
yes, I did. I popped in. I caught the tail end of that. I feel there's a lot of emotion. About Halo.
Ames is going through some stuff. He's processing things.
Yeah.
I heard. Yeah,
I'm
Call of
actually
Duty.
fine. Yeah. I've got the shield up. I'm trying to protect people. You know, I don't know. But no, thank you for joining us this morning. I've been looking forward to this. Obviously, you know, for those of you that follow the channel, you know that Rachel and I spoke, like I said, a couple months ago, and I would encourage you to check that interview out as I really enjoyed it. But I figured what we would do today is really kind of touch base. Obviously, you know, there's a broader community that watches Bitcast and listens to this afterwards. So one, I think that'll help get, you know, more eyes on your work, which I think is really important. But also I figured we could have an open conversation between Travis, Dan, myself, and anyone in chat who, you know, just wants to bring anything up, or even pose any questions to you if you don't mind being put on the spot a little bit. So,
Sure.
but first, before we do that, so, and I know, again, you and I have talked about this, but for the audience, so you are the research director, specifically for digital games at takethis.org. And if you want to just speak a little bit to your background in kind of that field, I think that could be beneficial if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. I am a research psychologist. So I do research. I don't do therapy, although I have a master's in counseling psychology. And I work for Take This, which is the first mental health nonprofit that serves the gaming community and the gaming industry. So we aim to destigmatize mental health challenges and provide information and resources. I love what Travis was talking about earlier. You don't know the games better than the developer knows the games. We do a lot of outreach for people in the industry, providing support for that exact issue, where people on the internet think they know more than the people who are making the games. So yeah, I've been studying games and gamers for about 10 years. With a specific focus on media effects. So how games impact us physically, socially, and psychologically.
Wow. Yeah. So
that's some serious stuff.
Yeah, a lot of education.
The tone has changed dramatically.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Let's. So why don't we go ahead?
Please.
Let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, if I could start. So
come.
yeah, this is fascinating to me. This is one of those things that like I think about a lot, but I have like absolutely no like you know, no basis for my like theories or like understanding of it. So it's kind of nice to have somebody who has dedicated so much of their life to this.
By the way, we finally have some class in Bitcast. I like it, Ela. Thank you.
Right? That's right. Yeah. She's got the bookshelf too. The bookshelf behind is like very like CNN. You know, everybody who appears on CNN has.
Dude,
like
I have a
book.
controller pillow. Come on.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're
stuffed animals. I have stuffed animals too.
If you're a streamer, it's all like action figures behind you, and
Yeah.
if you're on CNN, it's books. So I'm kind of jealous of that. I'll have to take this podcast to my book room. It's over there.
There you go.
My book room.
Yeah, I've got bookshelves. I promise. Just not here. But yeah, the one of my questions was just about like the nature of escapism and as like a healthy coping mechanism, because like my dad was very disappointed that I came out the way I did as a nerd, because he's like this big, like ripped dude, like toxic masculinity personified, just like that sort of guy. And seeing somebody like me whose go-to move was, when I was getting bullied in school or whatever the heck was happening to me growing up, was to just like play a video game and or D&D or something like that to sort of escape. And since that's something that you cover, my family's and some of my friends too, their perception was that escapism was kind of an unhealthy coping mechanism because you're running from your problems and that sort of thing. And to a certain degree, that's probably true if you're taking it so far that you're kind of neglecting your personal health or your relationships with others. And so I'm wondering, just what is sort of the line of video games being a healthy coping mechanism for escapism versus being an unhealthy thing that you're sort of neglecting oneself or one's life? That's
great question.
I always think about that all the time. Like, am I going too far with my video games, or is this like a healthy amount? So
yeah, well, what's really interesting is that escapism with games are viewed differently than escapism into other things. And I talked about this with Ains last time.
Yeah,
I was talking about how I was escaping into The Witcher because I was late to the game with the Witcher Netflix series. And when I found it, I was like in it for like 2 days and I watched it all. And that's fine, right? That's not seen as something that's a problem. But if I'm escaping into, Legends of Zelda for 2 days, then that's a problem, and there's something weird and there's something wrong going there. So just generally, video games have a bad rap. They're actually very good for escapism purposes, for stress release, for taking a break from everyday life, for releasing endorphins, for doing something playful, just like it is to watch a Netflix series. So in that sense, the function is the same. When does it become a problem? Well, then we start talking into problematic use, which we could talk about again in regards to anything, not just playing video games. But when you start to neglect other areas of your life, then it might be a problem. So if you are neglecting your physical health, your psychological well-being, your social life, your work, your education, then you have to take a look and say, okay, is this becoming a maladaptive coping strategy? Am I using games in a way that's now harming me in other areas of my life? Or did I just have a bad day and I want to go home and I want to kill some zombies? Because there's nothing wrong with that.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's something that maybe people who use escapism as a coping mechanism would have a hard time identifying, because in a certain sense, anytime you're playing video games, which is a purely recreational activity, you're neglecting your life in some sense. It's just a kind of matter of like balancing that, like how much is a good amount to neglect, I guess.
Well, yeah. Well, it's about, is it detrimentally impacting you? Are you not showing up to work? Are your friends like, hey, I haven't seen you in a really long time? Like, well, I mean, not COVID times, but you know what I mean? So yeah, of course it's a balance. They call it an inelasticity of time, right? Time is not elastic. You have so much time in the day and you choose to spend it in certain ways. But if you're, like calling in sick to work or not turning in your school assignments or not bathing properly, like then it's starting to become something to think about.
Yeah, I think most gamers already have the not bathing properly.
No.
Have you been to a convention?
I have.
They need to lean into that speed stick. Let me tell you. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man. Well, in that vein, Doctor, what are some, I guess, maybe warning signs? I've got 5 kids, so I've been, they run the age from 14 to 24. Like, are there any like warning signs that people can look for outside from the obvious, not showering or, shunning, anything in grass, basically, like one of our commenters says? Is there anything like maybe more subtle that people can look for to maybe see when that becomes an imbalance, I guess, when the balance gets out of whack a little bit?
I mean, it's not so much a fine line as it is, it's a quite dramatic line. So I think an important thing to think about is the difference between increased engagement and problematic use. So during Christmas holidays, when you get the new Ninja Turtle arcade game for your NES and you're loving it, right? That's increased engagement. You're playing more. You're playing more during COVID quarantine, most likely. You're playing more during summer vacation. That's not something to worry about. What's something to worry about is if you are not meeting your other needs in other areas of your life. Okay. That's really the line. So I have a YouTube channel called Zeitgeist where I do little short videos. I have one about escapism because I do get that question. A lot of people have that question actually. But there's one also about problematic use and addiction, because I think it is a large concern, especially during COVID this last year when kids have been playing more games. But it really is it negatively impacting all areas of their life for an extended period of time? Because there's no evidence to suggest that games are themselves a problem. It's more, are you using games in a problematic way? And then you have to kind of tease out what is underlying that. Is it increased stress? Is it bullying at school? Is it depression? What are games? What purpose are they serving? Because it's not the games that are the issue. The games are the strategy that have then become a problem.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I think one of the things I was going to ask you further along those lines, Rachel, is about in this time, right? In the pandemic time, we've seen a lot more people engaging with games, as you said.
Yeah.
And I think many of us, Dan and myself, and I know you as well, with children. My youngest is now 16, so he's not very young anymore. But within his age group, right, the teenagers, like the way that they gather socially now is just through games. The vast majority of the time, they're playing games online and always in a party together, a Discord or something, right? That's just how they hang out. What are your thoughts or studies? What's kind of the consensus, or is there a consensus on that? Is the social impact of gaming together, chatting together remotely kind of the same mentally, do we know long term, as getting together with family and friends in real life, right? Is that a one-to-one, or are there differences that we found?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's a one-to-one, but there has been research looking at the impact that has on us psychologically, and it's generally very positive. There's been a lot of discussion about games have been the saving grace over the last year because it's social and it's playful and it's easily accessible. And there's something different about, having a dinner party with Zoom open on your computer versus like collaborating together in a Minecraft world and creating something fun and playful and social with your friends. There was a really great study about Twitch, actually, that came out last year. At the end of last year, there was a special issue in a journal called Frontiers. It's all open access, so anybody can read it. But it was Twitch during difficult periods. So watching Twitch during COVID reduced loneliness, provided emotional support, it provided social communities just by watching, just the presence of watching someone else that you don't even really know. So games are fantastic tools, and they can have a range of positive psychological and social benefits.
Wow. Yeah, because I know, I was thinking about this more last night, actually, because I was in a party, like 9 other people. Some of them are in this chat. And it occurred to me, as it does from time to time, right, that I have never met any of these people in real life, not once.
Right.
And yet I talk to them every day, and I consider them my friends. And I know that when we do get a chance to meet in real life, we'll just pick up right where we left off, online and have a drink and share food and what have you. But it's just, I don't know. I think that's very interesting to me, because I think some of the older kind of stigmas associated with this is that hanging out in this way or being online and talking is not the same, right? It's just it's a lot of, especially, I don't want to say older people because that's a generalization, right? But I think a lot of people who may not be as familiar with gaming or the modern state of it kind of have that feeling.
Oh, for sure. And it is not even older people, because I have a neighbor and I talk about her a lot. She doesn't watch these things. I don't think so. It's cool. Her son plays a lot of Minecraft. And I remember she was like, I'm really concerned during COVID because he's playing so much Minecraft. And I'm like, that is the best option. That is the best thing he could be doing in terms of worried. Like, I would be very excited that's what he's drawn to. But I have been to conventions, Travis, and I do. I look forward to, again, going to like PAX, right, and seeing these people who I know online, who I know on Twitter, who I know here, and meeting them in person. And it's there's no like barriers anymore. It's all very fluid, our relationships between online and offline. That's when people say real world and not real world. I really dislike that, because it's like, online and offline, the relationships don't change. It's just like the medium we're interacting in is changing.
They're all real world. One is just a different,
Yes.
So I actually wanted to ask you about the friend making part of gaming too,
Yeah.
and the mental health for that, because there's something about being in a chat where, you know, the obvious thing is that people usually don't know what you look like, and so it gives you a chance to make friends without having to worry about them judging the way you look or dress, or, you know, if you're maybe a disabled person, or you don't have to worry about the same barriers, which is another thing I want to talk to you about, is accessibility in gaming, which is I think games are like way ahead of a lot of other like digital kind of platforms. But the benefit of being able to kind of like get your feet wet with socializing without having to kind of like go outside and go to a party or a bar or do something that, like, to me sounds crazy. Like, really, that's how you make friends? You just like go to a bar and you start like talking to people? Like, that's wild. Like, you know, I've got to like vet people before I meet them in person. Like, you know, I played Destiny with this guy for like 3 or 4 years, and then the first time I ever met him was at his wedding. He like invited me to his wedding.
Wow.
It was like a surreal experience. It's like, oh yeah, I was like on Xbox with you in party chat like the night after you met this girl, like the first time. I remember you coming home and played Destiny, and we were like, oh my God. So I'm wondering what have there been any like studies done or that sort of thing about that sort of anonymity of socializing online and the ability to kind of like pivot those skills into making friends in real life, or meet space as we call it?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole bunch actually. Online games provide a bunch of social accommodations. So you don't have to worry about nonverbal cues, right? You don't have to worry about what you look like. You don't have to worry where your hands are, how close you're standing to another person. Like, all of that is gone. So you can focus on the content of the conversation. Well, the game also accommodates that because it provides a perpetual topic of conversation. If I go to a bar and try to meet a friend and be like, sup, like, I don't have anything to say. But if I'm playing a game together, I could be like, oh, let's go over there. Let's do this. We got to do that. Do you have this? So there are a whole bunch of social accommodations that it provides. And actually, they talk about in the research, friendships are made backwards. So in the real world, we meet someone and over time learn if we can trust them, how much we like them, how much you want to keep hanging out with them. But it's opposite in a game. You learn if you can trust them first. Are you going to help me kill this dragon? Or are you going to stand in the AoE? Because if you're standing in the AoE, we can't be friends. I'm not going to spend any time with you. So once we've established trust, we already have like a higher threshold for our friendship to then build up on. I got lost in my tangent. But yes, there's a lot of research looking at the social accommodations of games. And also they talk about modality switching. So taking friends online, offline, and taking offline friends online. And again, it is very fluid, and like going to people's weddings, and you have this history, this long history with them, even though you've never met them in real life. So is that friendship more valuable than any other friendship, or is it less valuable? It's often perceived as being less valuable. I mean, to me, it seems relatively equivalent.
Right? Yeah, I agree. I think they hopefully are equivalent, but yeah, that I love what you said there about the wow, my brain just completely forgot what you were saying.
My pickup lines at bars.
Sorry. The trust exercise first was what I was attaching to, because I think the way I made friends in real life outside of gaming was through like improv. I was like in improv comedy, and that sort of does the same formula, which is like it makes you play trust games with each other repeatedly, and then you sort of get to know the people after that, like after practice or whatever, after a show. And like most of my friends in life were kind of that thing. Fraternity is also similar. There's like lots of like trust games involved in that, and then afterward you get this. So that's a really interesting observation. But I kind of love that. I kind of love that, actually. It kind of explains why I've gravitated toward that. It's like games and kind of putting you in interesting situations with people that kind of force you to build bonds that way.
Right. And then you know real quick whether you even want to bother.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Let
me
also.
Oh, go ahead, Travis. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it also takes down the barriers of like, maybe somebody's overweight or somebody's a different ethnicity you're not used to seeing, or the disabled situation. Like I was talking to a friend this week who told me that only 2% of the internet is accessible, and I was kind of, I guess, not surprised, because I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like if you can't see, for example, how are you going to surf the internet? But then I started thinking about it, and I realized that the games medium, which is way younger than the world of the internet, is way more accessible. Like you can blow through a straw and play Xbox. Like that kind of blows my mind. And the whole narrator feature on by default is becoming like really common, and it's something that you just kind of like, if you're able to see things, you just like learn to turn it off now, but usually it's like on by default is something you're seeing. So that sort of like removal of barriers that might make friendships less likely, or might make a person less open-minded, or those sorts of things. I also think is pretty interesting about this.
Yeah, absolutely. The visual anonymity of the internet. And then what's cool about that too, again, like comparing to, back in my day, we had chat rooms. It's different, right? So even though you can't see each other, your bonds are just becoming so much stronger. And then, later it's like, oh, you're older than me, or you're younger than me, or you're in a different part of the world than me. And that doesn't become a barrier to becoming friends.
Yeah, that's how I became friends with these old men. That
right. Yeah. If you knew they were that old, you wouldn't have talked to them.
No. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm not playing Xbox with you.
All right, shut up, Junior.
We're going to talk.
But I think going further on that point too, I think when I wrote an article a couple years ago about my son, which we talked about as well, I called games the great equalizer in that vein, right? Because what I found as I did more studies into this further along this point, Travis, is around like, because none of these other things that would happen or would have a factor in real world when you're looking at someone for the first time, as Dr. Coop was explaining, is it really just comes down to your capability in that game, like whatever you're playing together, as you said, right? So it's like, if you're, for people like us, Travis, who get really in the competitive side, right? I don't care anything about you other than how good you are at this game. If we're playing together, I expect you to be competent. And if you're not, I don't care if you're my brother. I don't need you in my party. Or, I'd rather have someone who's competent. And I think that's another aspect of games I find really interesting as well.
For sure.
Do you think there's any benefits from stuff like Game Pass that is sort of exposing people to different types of games? Like, obviously there's the lowest common denominator of like, oh, I just want to go home and shoot some zombies, just kind of like mindless fun. But then like with games becoming more accessible, maybe now they would play, a story game that they might not play, or a puzzle game that's sort of like hopefully building like mental acuity in a way that another game might have. So is there something to like the diversity of games that players now have access to that you think could be beneficial to mental health?
Oh, for sure. And there's a big push too from indie developers about games that are about mental health, not games for like the treatment of mental health, but games that have mental health themes, things like Sea of Solitude or Celeste or Stardew Valley and these kinds of things. We're seeing really a big push in that direction.
Like awareness, right?
Popular. Yeah, like awareness. And it's kind of like unintentional learning, right? So like Stardew Valley is a very good example. There's Shane. If you've played Stardew Valley, have you guys played Stardew Valley?
Yeah, a little bit.
A couple minutes.
A couple minutes. Okay, well, there's a guy named Shane, okay? And he seems like a real big jerk. And I was like, who's this guy, Shane? I'm not romancing him. He's so rude. He's so off-putting. But if I'm a terrible person, because turns out he's depressed. And if you actually like take the time to talk to him, he has a very beautiful storyline about depression and substance use and substance dependency. And then in the end, if you push through it all, he ends up like raising chickens and he's like super sweet and adorable. So I do think that it can make a difference, because that is teaching us different things like, oh, maybe people who have depression have, take a bit more time and patience to like get to know. And we learn with Celeste, anxiety, there's built-in mechanisms where there's like a feather and you have to calm your breathing and you tap A like slowly to make the feather go down. And it's teaching you about like how, if you're having a panic attack, like how to calm down. So I do think that. And then in terms of the Game Pass, I don't have an Xbox. I know, cue the shock and horror. But the clinical director of Take This, he has a quote. He said it a couple times about like, it's the single greatest thing that ever happened to games is the Game Pass, because it does really just let you have gaming experiences you would not normally have, right? I wouldn't normally buy this game, but since it's included in the Game Pass, I might just give it a go for 2 minutes playing Stardew Valley. Maybe give it a few more minutes. It's a great game.
Let me this circles back a little bit to what we were talking about previously, but I want to get to it because it's a question from Elu, who is part of Season Gaming, one of our community members. So he was saying, with kids needing to stay in more due to COVID, kids may decide that online engagements and gaming with friends is all that is needed. How do we keep and teach a healthy balance to them?
Games should be one of many things that we do, just like hanging out with our friends is one of many things that we do. I mean, we shouldn't hang out with our friends all day, every day, constantly. I think it's about balance. It really is. So what is the utility of the game serving is often the question I ask. What's its purpose? Okay, if it's hanging out with friends versus just something to pass the time, right? So then maybe allowing a bit more time because you realize it also has a social component. It's also fulfilling these social needs. Yeah. So playing a little bit more, fine. It shouldn't be the only thing. And also you have to think about things like eye strain. Like that's legitimately a concern. Like we shouldn't have a screen this close to our face, like for multiple hours in the day. We need breaks.
Yeah. Also sitting.
Yeah, also sitting.
Yeah, moving too.
Yeah.
So I think one of the oldest stigmas, and I know, again, we talked about this previously, but I know you put a video out on it just this week, was around violence in video games, right? Not in video games, but video games causing violent behavior and aggression. And there was a new study that you kind of broke down in the video about that. And it's, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it just seemed to be kind of further evidence that there's really not a connection here that's been, proven that directly that playing video games, whether they're violent or not, has any kind of direct correlation to violent behavior in real life.
Correct. So this month, when I do my YouTube videos, I often pick a theme, and I've been avoiding video games and violence because I feel like, for me, I've talked about it since the beginning of my career because it's been like the thing that the question. But then I realized people still have the question. I was like, oh, so I should definitely make these.
It's still out there.
It's still there. So this Wednesday is actually an all new video, a state of the research, right? It's going to talk about all the research that we have. And really, the answer is you are correct. There is no link between violent video games and violent behavior. It has been studied. It's gotten the most money, the most time, the most research, the most attention. Like we have beat the dead horse. There is no link between violent video games and violent behavior. Now, I think what muddies the waters is there's research that's found short-term increases in aggression following violent video game play. And I think when people see that, they kind of misconstrue it into a headline, like games make you aggressive. But again, this research is in a lab. It's short-term. It's directly after play. And it's usually like a word completion task. Like these research studies are not, play Grand Theft Auto and then follow them out in the world and see if they start fights on the street. It's literally like fill in a piece of paper that says KI blank blank and I put kiss, and then I play GTA and then I put kill instead of kiss when I do the same task, and they're like increase aggression. And I know that sounds silly. That is legitimately the methods that are used. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
I had read that there was like some study or something that said that actually the opposite is true, that people who play violent video games are less likely to do something because they see the results of their actions. Like they see the other person get hurt and then they build empathy. Like, oh man, I really wouldn't want to shoot somebody in real life because look what it does, that sort of thing.
Well,
I don't know if you've read about that. I haven't seen
that, but I can see how that could be said. I've seen studies talking about like sublimation, which is a Freudian defense mechanism. So we get out our negative impulses in positive ways. So people who are feeling aggressive or violent play these games to get those out in a digital space so they don't do those things in meat space. So I have seen that. So yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, like I know for me, the thing that always gets me is like, you ever watch like a movie or a show where somebody like does something terrible, like kill somebody on accident, and then they have to spend like the rest of the movie like covering it up, and the cops are slowly closing in on them, and they're kind of like getting nervous. Like I have that recurring dream that like something like that happens. Like, I hit somebody with my car, and then I'm like running away, and I wake up like, oh my god, like covered in sweat. Like I'm so glad I didn't like do that in real life.
Actually do that, yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like video games are this, like obviously some of it is impractical, like because it's so fantasy you can't really relate to it. But I know some games where like your character's in like a pickle, like they've done something awful or in a bad situation, they always make me feel like I'm so glad my life is boring. Like I don't want to have to deal with something that's like this stressful and like high stakes. So
oh man, when I get more than 2 stars in GTA, I'm like
yeah,
to someone else, like get the cops away from me.
Yeah, can you imagine being hunted by the cops? Like that's
terrible.
That's such a scary thought to me. Yeah,
definitely.
So the test that you were talking about, you briefly referenced around like where they will take a test, play a game, then take the same test and see the result. So Kev quickly asked, I wonder if this test would come out the same after intense workouts or watching certain movies, right? Is that the same kind of correlation again?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely. I haven't seen it in relation to watching movies, but games are I always talk about them as being the latest in a long line of moral panic. So I imagine when like film was the height of the moral panic, they probably used those kinds of tests to see what impact they would have.
What if the users take a test and then they go and play a dating sim and then take the same test? Would they be more likely to fill in kiss or?
You just had to insert dating sim somewhere here, didn't you?
It's a callback from last week's episode. I'm just saying, maybe have the studies been done on dating sims effects on the gaming community? Are you more likely to kiss a person in real life if you digitally make out with people in a dating sim?
I mean, I can't say I'm familiar. Maybe you have a PhD topic to like explore.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm walking around, in my samurai gear, shortly after, playing my Ghost of Tsushima game this week. So I think you're okay. Jeez, man.
So
we should do a study on that, Doctor. Like, you could be Dr. Love here. Like, let's
do it.
The SG team up.
What dating sim would you use? What dating sim game?
Oh God, you've opened Pandora's box.
Sorry,
you really have, because this is
okay.
Really
okay, just give me like your top. What's your
Monster Prom? That's a great game. Yeah, that's a great game. That's like one of the first dating sims because my girlfriend got me into them because she's like all about it. And Monster Prom 1 and Monster Prom 2 are both games that they help you because it's all high school archetypes. Like there's like a dumb jock and like a guy who is drugs and does like alternative stuff and all that. And you start to like build empathy toward people that you never would think you get along with. Like obviously when I saw the dumb jock right away, I was like, all right, so not that person. Like I'm not going to romance them. But then through subsequent playthroughs, because each playthrough is like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, you have to romance different people. And so you start to like relate to and like people that you didn't think that you would have gotten along with and be like, oh, I'm actually glad I did that route. They're called like dating routes, like when you have to try different ones. And so from my perspective, I think that sort of game, it made me be like, oh, you know what? People are cool. Like even different types that aren't my folks. Like that's sort of the thing did for me. And that one also has like mental health stuff in it. I just think it's like dating sims are very smart games because they're all just like dialogue and character. And it's not something I would have ever thought that I liked, but you try new stuff and you learn. And
it's like
we were talking about it because they put a dating sim on Game Pass last week. And some of us in this chat were more open to the idea of playing a game where you date cute boys than other people in this chat.
Wait, explain it properly so she has the context, right? You date cute boys who become your swords to battle with.
Oh, boyfriend dungeon. Dude, I'm all about boyfriend dungeon. Come on.
We've got it on the line. It's doctor approved.
Yes.
Doctor approved.
Yes.
Take your medicine. Take your shots. Play boyfriend dungeon.
Yes, I'm actually going to be streaming that soon. Very
nice.
soon.
Yes. That's perfect. It became a big topic last week, as he said. So too funny.
Come on, Dan. Get on the
again.
Yeah, Dan turned the reddest I have ever seen him last week.
We still need to get you to stream it, Dan. I will. That would be so hot on YouTube. My God.
Yeah, it'd be trending number 2 at least, I would think.
So I was going to ask you what, since we last talked, and obviously the questions here today that we've talked through, what's kind of like, the thing you're most working on presently, right? Like what's coming up in the next several months for you? Is there anything kind of notable or top of mind that you wanted to touch on that's coming up for either Take This or personal work or anything of that nature?
Yeah, well, actually, going back to what I talked about when I first came on, I'm actually in the process of creating a workshop. At Take This, we do a lot of educational and advocacy outreach for gaming companies. And I'm working on a workshop about how to address and discuss this idea of game developers being harassed through social media when people don't like their game.
Yeah.
And how to, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I really like the quote. I wrote it down about, you don't know the game better than they do, because it is becoming a big issue. Even, Boyfriend Dungeon, there was a little controversy on Twitter. About
yes, there was
Dungeon.
about the voice actor, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the problem?
What so yeah, let's touch on that then, because it goes back to, I think, years ago, right? You had no accessibility to the people that made these games. The game came out, you played it, and you never even knew who made it. And just the nature of the environment we live in today in the social space, we have this open communication, and many of us who cover this stuff, write about it, etc. I mean, I follow tons and tons of developers, studio heads, and have interacted with them. But obviously we're talking more about the negative aspects here. So I mentioned earlier too, just before you came on, I think around one of the issues with the whole Halo kind of outrage this past week is transparency. We always scream that we want transparency, but when we get it, there's a percentage of the community that doesn't like what they hear. Right. And then they have to, let their feelings be known about it. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. Like when you first came on, you mentioned about developers really struggling with that, right? And I can only imagine. I was trying to correlate that to my work, because I am in application development and project management and all these things, and I was just trying to imagine, wow, what if millions of people had their eyes on the work I do, and when we miss a delivery date, which we do all the time, or we have to launch without features, which we do all the time, right? Where they had a voice directly to me to let their feelings be known that we had missed these things. That would be rough at times. I'm pretty, I'm pretty, people don't really get to me, especially if I don't know you personally. But I can only imagine that over time, that continual kind of erosion, would happen of just being able to, wanting to almost shut it off completely. Right. For
sure. And that's what's so difficult. I think there's so many elements at play. One is about gaming. We have a passion for gaming. People who make games have a passion for gaming, almost assuredly.
Of course.
So you put your heart and your soul into making these things, and then the internet's like, nah, don't like it. But not just like that, because they're, we saw with Boyfriend, they are very, very mean and cruel on the internet. People can be. And, there's other people on the other side of that screen. And as the voice actor said, I know the guy is not a good guy, but it's my job and I'm just the voice. And
it's no different from a villain in a big movie. I mean, they're not really that person.
Irons.
It's an actor.
He killed Mufasa. We still like him. So, right? It's hard. It's hard. And then the issue too is, what do you do as the developer? Because I feel like a lot of times the developers are expected to have a social media presence to engage with the fans. And I think they want to engage with the fans.
Yeah.
But you also probably don't want to be on the internet if people don't like your game.
Yeah.
So do you think the benefits of social media outweigh the negative aspects? Because, growing up, at least me and Ains, I'm just going to date it's us two because I'm trying to be nice. So we grew up with EGM. We grew up with Nintendo Power. We grew up with a magazine that we would get all of our information from. There was no internet. It was just, nobody had that voice unless you were one of the 20 people that got into the very beginning of the magazine, where they had, the reader letters that were sent in.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
Which they curated ahead of time, right?
Yeah. Right. So having all that information, obviously is to a certain extent a blessing, but also brings with it all these negative, comments, these negative attitudes. Do you think the benefits, I guess, outweigh, what we have to see? And I mean, and there are ways, obviously, to kind of sidestep some of this stuff, but a lot of people don't, and they just kind of, they say they don't like it, but yet engage at the same time. So it's one of those weird areas, I guess, in gaming for me.
I think, yeah, it's gray, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say whether the benefits outweigh the negatives. I mean, it depends. It's all fun and games until someone wants to cancel you or doesn't like what you did. But I think it's important. Like the reason that I'm building this workshop and developing it is to give people in HR and give developers like the tools to have like the boundaries. I think it's really important to have policies and boundaries around how do you engage and how do you protect your own mental well-being when people are saying terrible, disgusting things about you or posting your personal information online or threatening to kill you and all these things that are happening. So I think as long as we can continue the discussion about boundaries and how to protect yourself and your own mental well-being when this kind of stuff happens, we can mitigate some of the negatives.
Yeah, I think the thing, so like full transparency, like I'm really interested in picking your brain on this topic because I review games for a living. That's like I review games for IGN, and when you're giving a critical opinion of a game, you're kind of viewed as being part of like the toxicity or the kind of like candor in the situation, because you're saying like, oh, this game's bad and this game's good, and reviews are all about opinions and you assigning like a number score and that sort of thing. And kind of the way I view it is, don't take it personally. Like it's a game, and I'm not attacking people. I'm saying, sometimes games aren't that good, and I'm trying to help buyers make decisions about how they spend their time or how they spend their money and that sort of stuff. And so I view it as like very defensive of like the consumer. Like that's who I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help the consumer. But there's also that other side where developers read the reviews and sometimes they reach out to me, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for negative reasons. And so sometimes I see developers do the same thing their commenters do, which is send hate mail to people who created a thing, right? Like I create a video game review and then a developer reach out to me and be like, how dare you? And I'm like, don't you deal with this? Like, shouldn't you have empathy on this one topic? Like, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, I'd be really just interested to hear in your, like, which one do you think, because there's two philosophies for game development. There's the whole like unveiling of like a painting, right? Like you painted something and now you're going to share it with the world, and you pull off the curtain and you go, voila, what do you think? And some people will be like, wow, that's great. And some people will be like, I don't like it. But at least they're getting the full experience, because what game development has become now is a guy is painting something, his masterpiece, right? And everybody's watching it happen. And some people are giving their live reaction going, boo, I don't like what you're doing.
I don't like that color.
The guy painting it is going, well, I'm not done yet. Like I'm doing the outline, so like hold your horses, like wait until you see the full thing. But that's sort of the reality of the situation. Is some people are saying, well, we want more of that. We want to see more of the process of you painting it so that we can kind of give our feedback. And which one do you think is better, for the mental health of the people developing the game, or the mental health of the people who are viewing it and are invested? Because there is also that relationship of, would I rather not know and wait, or do I want updates all the time and kind of like make this part of my life?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very individual question. I love seeing updates of The Witcher season 2. It's coming in December. I'm excited. But I also have no criticism for that show. So yeah, I think it depends on the person. But in terms of your critiques being seen as part of the toxicity, I think it's important to remember that toxicity and trolling, it's all about negative intent. You don't have a negative intent. You're giving critical feedback. I mean, criticism and critics' takes on art has existed forever. Books, art, video games. So it's unfortunate that it's getting lumped into this idea that you're like in the same pool as someone who's like, I hate you because you voiced the bad guy in the game.
Yeah, there's like the personal attack, but some people view, if you're attacking the game, you're attacking the people that made it and all that stuff. And sometimes I have to be really frank about a game like Cooking Mama All-Star, like which I think I gave like a 3, which if you give a game a 3 on IGN, it says awful, right? It says like this game is awful. And so the view there is that, oh, you're thinking the developers are awful and you're kind of like dissing them and that sort of stuff. And I'm not trying to diss anybody, but like if a game is awful, a game's awful. And I hope that all those developers are okay. And in my experience, most of the time, developers aren't surprised by reviews. They know when a game isn't very good, and when the scores come out, they kind of go, "Yeah, I mean, Not surprising to me. Those are the adult ones though, but some are take it very personally, especially, indie developers where it's like one person who put their heart and soul into it for 7 years. And it does feel a little bit more personal.
I think it's an important point though, that the developers aren't the game, just like the actor isn't the character. Like you're not criticizing, person A who works at the studio. You're just, as a whole, cooking mama didn't do it for you.
Yeah.
Never even heard of that game.
Well,
you're lucky apparently.
I think that's partially due to my review, unfortunately. The game got buried pretty quickly. Actually, Nintendo took it off of the eStore after my review published, so you cannot buy that game right now unless you buy it physically. But yeah, that's always like an interesting thing to me, because I feel like there's a lot of the culture is around like everybody taking it personally and like associating their identity and their well-being with a game or its success or that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. That's hitting the nail on the head. That's exactly why this is such a tenuous issue, because we have surrounded with it the social identity of being a gamer, of being a game developer. It's all intertwined. So it's not so much like what Ains was saying, if somebody complained about your product, like your identity isn't so much tied up into creating this product. But when people, get their dream job, right, as a game developer, which comes with often a lot of stress and overwork and underpaid and like other issues going on with it, they put their heart and their soul, I'm a gamer, I love playing games, I'm part of the gaming community, and that community turns on you and is like, you created something that's shite. Like that has an emotional impact. It's not just like, oh, the research report that I wrote up, my boss doesn't like it. It's like I put my identity and pieces of me and my love for this community into this product, and now people hate it. So it's hard not to take it personally, I think, when your social identity is wrapped up in your job. So that's another thing we talk about a lot at Take This, is like where are the boundaries between your professional life, your personal life, who you are versus what you do, who you are versus the products you create. It's all blurry when it comes to game development, which is part of the problems.
And I think it happens on the fan side too. Like fans sort of attach themselves and pin their hopes on like a game being good or a product. Like there's the whole console where like people are like, oh, I'm a diehard PlayStation and I'm going to defend them. And if PlayStation's doing well, I'm doing well. And so I feel like the stakes just get taken up a lot when it's a lot of people's like personal, like, their hopes and dreams are like on the table as like well, if this game doesn't do well, we're all gonna riot, and it's just like, okay, well, it's just a game, like
but it's part of, so our identity, we identify with groups, right? So if that's the group that we have put our identity into, then we're emotionally invested, and I will die on that hill, right?
Yeah. And does some of this tie? I know we talked previously around like the infancy of the medium, right? Whereas video games don't have the same level of history as books and music and movies to a degree. Because as you guys were talking through that, I was thinking, gosh, I was thinking through, we used, at least I feel like we used to think the same thing about movies. And as the social space has blossomed and directors are now more in the crosshairs, right? And specific actors. I mean, you think of things like the Snyder Cut or, directors who have had a big IP where they've created a movie that they just didn't like the original Justice League, right? There was a lot of hate thrown around after that movie released. And it feels like that's part of the issue is because of the social space, but it's also starting to shift to the other mediums as well, purely because of what we're talking about, the social space and the access to people you didn't usually have. I've seen the same thing with bands, right? Whereas bands, you'd usually buy a CD or a tape or whatever record going way back. You go see them in concert, but it's not like you ever had any sort of platform to voice displeasure in a new release that a band has. And now a band puts out a video or something on social media and you have tens or hundreds of thousands of fans or millions of fans instantly screaming whether they like it or hate it or what, it just feels very different, I think. And I can, like we said, I can only imagine what that feels like to the people themselves, the creators.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you brought up a Henry Cavill movie just for me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. You got it. You got it. Yeah.
Like Justice League. Yeah.
What's your season 2's only a couple? Yeah,
December.
I know.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Mission Impossible. I'm just gonna keep bringing up Henry Cavill.
Yes, please do. That's the key.
Count
to
of
my
Monte
happiness.
Cristo. He's a
Yeah.
kid in that one. He did that when he was a kid. I have a question for you, completely unrelated. Are you an artist or play a musical instrument?
Both.
Yes, I knew it. You know how I knew? You know how I knew?
No, I don't know how you
This
know.
is how I knew. Every person who's an artist or plays a musical instrument or both that I know sorts their books by color.
Oh.
And I do not understand how you could do that. How or like the logic there. I'm like an alphabetical man.
Has to
like
be alphabetical, yeah.
Exactly,
We
that's
need
how
to
I
get
do it.
into this. It has to
But
be
our
alphabetical.
artists and musicians, they sort their books by color, and I'm like, how do you find anything? And they're like, because I remember what the color of the book
Yes,
is.
you do.
Exactly.
Okay,
I can't think that way, but anyway.
Here's the thing: you remember the color, and for the really right here, these are all the books that either I wrote or I contributed to. So those are separate, so I can actually find them. These, if it takes me a while, it's okay. It's just, but it looks nice in the background, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never understood that, but everyone I know, I just knew. I was as soon as I saw your camera, I was like, she does art or plays music.
You know, it's funny with this background. Most people, they either talk about the books or they talk about Cave Johnson.
Yeah, it's hard to see on the screen here.
It's a Cave Johnson picture from Portal.
Okay.
Those are like the two things that people always
You might want to provide some context there because I don't know who you're referring to.
Scientist from Portal. Very snarky.
Okay.
He's like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of his age.
Yes.
Nice. So we got a question earlier just for fun for you about what is your comfort food game?
Oh, any old school Final Fantasy. Usually 6 is my favorite. We've been over that.
Yeah, of course. You're a woman of culture. We know this.
Culture, yes. But I like any 6 and before. I like all of those. That's very comforting. Just there's just 8-bit music and no voice acting and turn based.
And here's a question. I don't even want to ask this because I'm scared of what you're going to say. But do you play Monster Hunter? And if you do you like it?
I do not know what that is.
You're good then. Thank you.
Okay.
Save yourself the time. You don't.
Okay.
It's very, very grindy. Is my experience with
it.
Monster
Is.
Hunter.
I don't got time for that. I got 3 kids.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have time for
so much. Like I'm collecting plants and meats and stuff, and they're having me cook. It's just I don't get it. Yeah,
that's too much of a time investment.
20-minute monster fights. I can't get into that game. Everything about it, I feel like I should like that game, but
and yet it just doesn't work, does it? No.
Yeah, I don't know.
You should think of it as a monster dating simulator.
It's like
he's here for that.
I'm dating them with my weapons. Got it. Okay,
right.
now I'm interested. So the thing that's missing, and you would know this if you play dating sim, Stan, is it's missing social links, which I'm not evolving my relationship with this monster as I attack it. It's just not the same.
Well, you can actually wear them after you're done with them. So
wear.
Oh, gosh.
Now you're coming around, Travis.
That's a really morbid date. I guess you could do that in a regular date, but then you'd go to jail.
That's all I got.
Acceptable.
Yeah, that's the best I can do. Oh man.
All right. So let me ask you, we'll start to wrap up here, but what else would you like to, anything else you'd like to call out? Anything else, we should be aware of? And obviously your information is in the comments, the description. So you can find Zeitgeist and Take This and Dr. Kowett's information there. So please do. But anything else you'd like to call out before we wrap up?
No, I think it was Boyfriend Dungeon, Witcher. We got the whole. I worked Final Fantasy 6 into there, so I feel like
I like the fact that we've spoken on video twice now. We've gotten Final Fantasy 6 in there both times. That's important.
Both times, I know.
That's important. We'll keep that going for sure. All right. Well, like I said, everyone, thanks for joining us. Please check out Rachel's work. It's just, I said this before, but I think it's the aspects of gaming that don't get talked about enough. And I think we need to do a better job of stop talking about feature being missing at launch of a game and spending all your energy and time focused on meaningless things like that. Focus on some of these more meaningful things that gaming do for us as a community, as individuals, all these different aspects. So, guys, anything else to add?
No, thanks for
exciting.
being here. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you.
If there's one, like, sorry, I have one more question.
No, go.
I was gonna say, if there's one thing that you wish, like, assuming that this show has a reach and is reaching some people, what's one thing that you would like more people to know that you feel like they don't know or they don't hear often?
When it comes to the uses and effects of games, the way games affect us, it is more positive than negative, or at the very least neutral. And I feel like games have such a bad rap, and for people who aren't familiar with them, they still see games as a negative energy force in the world, and that's absolutely not true. More positive than negative.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And yes, thank you sincerely for taking the time this morning. I know you had to move something around, so I hope it was worth it. But I hope
if it gets Dan to play Boyfriend Dungeon, then it's worth it.
It might be happening.
Yeah.
I'm start looking into this.
You have a whole panel looking at you.
It's
to play
on
this
Game
now,
Pass. It's accessible.
That makes it all better. After Ghost of Tsushima is finished,
Okay.
I will dabble.
Okay.
I gotta figure out the whole
record.
streaming thing because I have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, we have a record of it now. All right.
Ask your kid.
Excellent.
It will help you.
That's true.
How
That's
do
probably
you?
true.
Yeah.
No.
All right. We are going to go ahead and wrap up. Chad, thank you for being here. Anyone listening later, like I said, please check out Dr. Kowett's work. Thank you for tuning in. As always, this was Bitcast 167. And as always, you will find us here every Saturday morning. We hope to see you next time. Peace.